Welcome to the Seattle Week edition of Dolphins in Depth, Life Without Tua. I am your host, Miami Herald columnist Omar Kelly, and joining me now is Miami Herald beat writer for the Miami Dolphins, Isaiah Smalls. Welcome back to the podcast, Dolphins in Depth. Isaiah, obviously, the Dolphins are in panic mode, panic state, acting like everything is okay. The Titanic's sinking. People are getting on the life preservers.
Yep.
It's been charged that Sklyar Thompson is going to be the starter and asked to save the season while Tua Tagovailoa is sidelined with his concussions. We do not know how long Tua will be sidelined. We don't know if he's headed to IR. I suspect he will be headed to IR, but only time will tell. What's the latest update on Tua Tagovailoa?
So he was in the building today. Mike McDaniel said he looked happy. He was, talking with the guys. I'm sorry, Zach Sealer said he looked happy. McDaniel said that he was talking with the guys, and he brought the general level of just he seemed okay, quote unquote, which is what they're saying, right? Who knows if that's actually true? But it was a good sign to hear from Zach Sealer that he was good, and he looked good, he looked happy, So that's the latest on that. Obviously, they signed Tyler Huntley earlier today. I think NFL Network reported that first.
Tyler Snoop Huntley.
Yes, Tyler Snoop Huntley. Yes, very true. Tyler Snoop Huntley signed him from Baltimore Ravens' practice squad. He played some with the Ravens over the last 4 years. Specifically, was named to a Pro Bowl in 2022.
When nobody wanted to play in that game.
Yeah, I think that's an important caveat because if you look at the numbers, I think he was 2-2, and he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. But he was named to a Pro Bowl nonetheless. He actually has local roots here. Played at Hollandale High. Actually owns the Florida record. I found this out today. He owns the Florida record for most pass attempts in a game.
Oh,
yeah, it was 71. Yeah.
Okay.
He was owning that, John. So
I hope he was winning that game. He is the Florida Gatorade Player of the Year from Hollandale. Went on to play at Utah. He's 3-6 as an NFL starter, 64% completion rate on his passes. He's thrown 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's been sacked 29 times in 20 games, 79 passer rating, 509 rushing yards on 115 carries and 3 touchdowns. I don't know for Dolphin fans who think he's going to come here and unseat Sklyar in an offense he doesn't know. Trust me, it's not happening. Mike McDaniel has made it very clear to everybody, this is Sklyar's team right now. He's going to be able to hold down the fort. They're confident in Sklyar based on how he's performed in first opportunities and everything, is what Mike McDaniel said. And I thought to myself, boy, that's a load of bull crap if I've ever heard it. Looked at all his numbers and all of his firsts. They were tragic. Wrote a column about it. Sklyar has not done anything in a regular season game that would even merit hope, but he also hasn't had opportunity. And hell, at one point, Brock Purdy, a quarterback who was drafted after Sklyar in the same draft, had no name, had no resume till he got out there, was playing in front of a great offensive line with a good running game, had some weapons, and now he's probably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. So we don't know. I will say this about Sklyar, and I've always said this. For those who know, if you're a throwback Dolphin fan, he's got a little bit of Matt Moore in him, where there's some gunslinger in there. And so when you've got weaponry like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, you definitely – he's not as good as throwing the deep ball as Tua is. But there is some gunslinger mentality in there, so it's encouraging. How long do you think it's going to take Tyler to learn this offense?
Oof, man, with all the complications, I want to say at least a month. At least. So if we could just look at the schedule real quick, obviously you have Seahawks this week, Titans in 2 weeks, Patriots in 3 weeks, and then there's the bye. So after the bye, they come back and play the Colts. I could foresee Tyler, potentially coming in if, depends. Obviously, it depends what Sklyar does, right? Like, I think this is a tougher game than people are going to give him credit for. Going to Seattle with that 12th man, like, it's going to be loud in there. I know there's a few people who asked about that today.
I've been here before. It's loud, but it ain't I've been in loud venues in New Orleans and Atlanta when they were loud. It's a stadium.
The stadiums doesn't really matter.
You got to go with a silent count. All right. Like, the offense can't communicate. Okay. That how much different and as Jordan Brooks said, you just can't let the crowd get into it, and you got to play. Now, the one thing I will say about this Dolphins defense, which I think they've been okay, but they have been very good on third downs so far this season. I'm going to look up the numbers. I didn't before we did this show, but on third downs, they're holding opponents to 26.3% of third down opportunities. That, in my mind, has got to be one of the NFL's top 5. Now, the question is, will they be able to have that success against Geno Smith and that Seahawks offense? So we shall see. But it doesn't help if the offense can't score points, because that's what just about every defense needs.
Exactly.
With Sklyar, you saw him a little bit in training camp before you got moved over here to the Dolphins. What were your initial impression?
I mean, to your point, I really liked his ability to move the ball. I think he took more chances than Mike White, right? I think that's the reason why they decided to stick with him versus Mike White. I think with Sklyar, I think it ultimately comes down to, look, like, he has one of the best receiving cores in the league, right? Devon Achane has been one of the best running backs in the league so far this year.
5th in the NFL in yards produced with 260 all-purpose yards.
He is literally doing it all. He's catching the ball at the backfield, running the ball. Like, he's doing it all. So, I like the Brock Purdy comparison that you just made, because at the end of the day, he's stepping into an advantageous situation. This isn't Andy Dalton taking over the Panthers, right? Like, this is a team that has weapons, right? And I think, like any good quarterback, especially if you're a backup quarterback, your job is very simple. Just get the ball to your playmakers, right? And so if he follows that to a T, doesn't turn the ball over, that was huge last game. They had 3 turnovers in 3 quarters. Like, you're not going to win any games like that, right? So as long as he limits the turnovers, I like Sklyar. Obviously, he's not Tua, but I think he's a serviceable backup. Again, another year learning the system. I think, again, just be a good point guard. Get the ball into the hands of your playmakers.
Well, we've had this theory in South Florida, and all of the Tua pundits will tell you that anybody can run this offense with Mike McDaniel and this weaponry that they've got. They've got Tyreek Hill, they've got Jalen Waddle, they got Jonnu Smith, they've got the running game and the 2 running backs. I'm not sure they necessarily have the 2 running backs, because we don't know about Raheem Mostert's status. But now this will ultimately be put to the test. You say anybody can run it. You say this isn't a Tua-driven team. Well, we shall see. You talk about how easy it is, because that's what you were kind of hinting. The schedule is until you get to Indianapolis.
I wasn't. Well, I guess. I mean, I didn't mean for it to sound easy, but it kind of is. It kind of is. I mean, Titans. They're not. They look terrible. I watched them over the weekend. Like, Will Levis is not who they might have thought he was after that amazing game 1 last year, right? Seahawks, obviously, that's going to be a tough game. They have weapons at the receiver position. They have some good DBs over there. The Colts, I mean, they looked okay last week, not so much this week, right? So,
how you going to gloss over the Patriots? That's a rivalry.
My apologies. And then obviously with the Patriots, it's first-year head coach. Jacoby Brissett is throwing the ball. I'm not really the biggest Jacoby Brissett fan, but he's throwing the ball. I mean, like, look, like, these are, you couldn't have asked for, considering how the schedule ends, you couldn't have asked for, 4 easy games while your quarterback might be out, right? If they decide to put him on IR, he'll be out with, through those 4 games, right? If they decide to put him on like this week, right? So,
oh wow, you just said the Seahawks are easy games.
I'm just saying easier. I'm not saying that the Seahawks are an easy team. By no stretch of the imagination am I saying that. I'm just saying that it's easier compared to the back end of the schedule, because we know how that goes.
Interesting, but a lot of these games are going to be on the road. 3 of the next 4 are on the road, and the Dolphins do have that bye week sandwiched in. Here's the biggest thing that we shall be looking for this week: is Tua Tagovailoa going on IR, and if so, when? Obviously, it's going to have to be done before this weekend, so you can elevate somebody or you can sign somebody. More than likely, because Tyler Huntley was claimed off the Patriots practice squad, he will absolutely have to be on your 53-man of the Ravens practice squad. He will have to be on your 53-man roster for the next 3 weeks, or count as if he's on your 53-man roster for the next 3 weeks. And basically, you have to make a roster spot for him. Now, the Dolphins do have a couple of other injuries. Teron Armstead is battling a shoulder injury. Jeff Wilson is battling an oblique injury. Raheem Mostert, I believe, chest injury. He's got a chest injury. Raheem Mostert, there's a possibility that could be something that's not 2 to 3 weeks. We'll see where he is based on whether or not they put him on the IR, because they're going to need a roster spot too. I don't really see a player that they can release right now, unless you're talking about a Brandon Peely, but then that creates another void for your needs on this team. So this is a team that needs to address a lot of positions, not just the quarterback. I would make the argument, and most Dolphin fans don't want to hear this right now because they're all obsessed on Tua. You're averaging 4.5 yards. Your defense is averaging 4.5 yards against the run. You've allowed 3 touchdowns. I think that you have just as much of an issue on your defensive line as you do at quarterback right now, because when Calais Campbell is not on that field, it is glaringly obvious, and it is a problem. And you've got to get or find some better defensive linemen to fortify that unit, because you are one injury away from being a disaster on that defensive line. And that doesn't even account for the offensive issues. Teron Armstead with a shoulder injury. Robert Jones came out of that game. I can't remember what his injury was. Shoulder as well. So you got 2 of your left side starters, and they're battling shoulder injuries. You got to be concerned about what that line is going to look like against, the Seahawks. Now, my question is this the game where you unleash your rookie, your Patrick Paul, or do you rely on and lean on Kendall Lamb to hold you down like he did for 8 games last season as a starting offensive tackle?
Personally, I would rely on Kendall Lamb just off the strength that you already have. You're putting a young quarterback in a not the best situation, right? He's joining a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, right? So like I think you want to give him as much, not coddle him, but you want to surround him with as much certainty as possible, right? And the best way to do that is to put in a guy like Kendall Lamb, who, like you said, started 8 games last year, versus throwing a rookie out there to see like, okay, what do we got, right? I don't think we're in the what do you got stage, right? Especially going on the road to Seattle, right? Yeah. I want maybe next week you can try him out, but on the road at Seattle, no, thank you. I want somebody that is a proven quantity, and then we see what we have. In first of all, I would love for Patrick Paul to practice like he is starting, right? Get that in your head, right? That you could be starting, and evaluate how he practices. If it's really good, then if it's much better than Kendall Lamb, maybe you try him out. But I am a firm believer of having certainty on that offensive line as much as possible. So you
are a bird in the hand as opposed to a 2 in the bush kind of guy.
Of course.
I'm also a bird in the hand kind of guy. However, I know what I saw in the exhibition season. I saw size. I saw power. I saw bully mentality. I saw feet. I saw hands. I saw long arms. That translates to the NFL. You haven't seen every stunt. You haven't faced every elite defensive lineman, because you were generally going against second-team guys. But as Bill Parcells used to say, if the rookie don't bite as a pup, the dog don't bite. And you put him out there, and even if it's not a start, but you give him the first series of the third quarter, the second series of the first series of the second quarter, second series of the third quarter, you give him an opportunity to get some film underneath him, to learn about the speed of the NFL game, to learn about the pass rushing. The other position is Robert Jones. If Lester Cotton has to be in there, then that's another significant drop-off. For those who don't know, Lester Cotton and Kendall Lamb were on the field when Tua suffered his injury. That's not ideal for the Miami Dolphins. But I'm not blaming them for it because, hey, no, Tua didn't suffer his injury when he threw the pick six interception. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward with this franchise. It's not just Tua that they've got to patch up and address. They've got other issues, other concerns, depth concerns on the defensive line, injury concerns on the offensive line, injury concerns at running back, and clearly injury concerns at wide receiver because right now nobody is stepping up as a number 3 receiver. And in the last game, based on what we saw, the Bills were effective at taking Tyreek and Waddle out of the game. And the Dolphins cannot afford for teams to replicate that strategy. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let me ask you something that has hit the conversation board or conversation starters. Is Devon Achane ready to be a featured back in this Dolphins offense?
Oh yeah, I think so. 100%. 100%. I mean, last 2 weeks
you must have him on your fantasy team.
I don't have him. I wish I did. Look, I wish I did. What? I mean, like, look, I think we'd heard the talk about how he's going to, receive an uptick of touches this year, right? We didn't necessarily know how that was going to look. I think you said that you don't really like him catching the ball, but he's done a great job catching the ball, right? I think last week he tied Tyreek 2 weeks ago against the Jaguars. He tied Tyreek to lead the team in receptions, right? And not only did he do that, like he notched career highs in targets, receptions, and yards, right? Receiving yards, excuse me. So that was week 1, right? Week 2, he was basically the only bright spot on that offense, right? Back-to-back weeks over 100 all-purpose yards, right? Like, so this is a guy that is ready for that feature back role. Like I said, he's been their best offensive player through 2 weeks. And so I think when you see somebody like that and you see that they're rolling like that, I mean, you kind of would be remiss if you didn't use him, right? And then you heard McDaniel today talk about how he reemphasized what he mentioned on Thursday is like, remember, Etienne was hurt, like coming into the game.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he was acute.
Still limped off the podium when he was talking to us today.
Exactly. So he's not 100%, right? But he's someone that is putting the time in the training room to be able to be healthy because he realized, like all of us did, like, look, they need somebody to take over that running back role, right? And I think with Mostert out, obviously Jeff Wilson, we don't know his status, but he left the game early. It's really just him and Jalen Wright, who, we both acknowledge had a great preseason, but, very limited in his offensive reps. You think he was on the field a few times on Thursday, had a good run called back. Like, I think he had gotten 9 yards, but it was called back because of holding call. So when you think about this offense, right, and with Sklyar Thompson taking the reins of it, there's a few things you need, right? You want to have a good running game, right, to take some of the pressure off of him, right?
If I'm Seattle, I'm probably stacking the box.
Exactly, right?
Hey, young man, show me this arm.
Exactly. And, and so if they don't do that, right, you want to be able to hand the ball off to him. And obviously Achane can play on the outside, get some plays in the slot. He caught a few screens off the slot. So he is one of those guys that appears you can move him all over the field. And that, when you have an offensive mastermind like Mike McDaniel running the show, I think you look at that and, your eyes are just wide with anticipation. So I'm looking forward to see what he can do this year.
Now, what is your biggest concern, Isaiah, about this week's travel and preparation for Seattle?
Oof. There's many. I think offensive line is the biggest one, right?
What a surprise.
Because I don't think anything can happen. You can't look like football at the end of the day comes down to the trenches, right? And so if nobody is blocking up there, how do you expect Sklyar to have the time to throw the ball? Because he's not Tua. Like, remember Tua made the joke about, get the ball out quick. Like, it doesn't really matter who's blocking for me, right? Like, it was a little subtle shot, a subtle shot at the offensive line.
Yeah, Skylar's
that's not Sklyar. And so
pressure, and he's out the pocket. He's running, he's scrambling. It's a hot play.
It is, but I think there was a few plays that I saw, on Thursday where he did just that, but he didn't keep his eyes downfield because there was a few plays where Tyreek was wide open. And like, I think that'll work. Like, if he's going to be outside the pocket, he might just have to at least once or twice just throw it, see if Tyreek can go get it, because Tyreek is one of those guys, right? So for me, I'm looking at the offensive line, the health there. That's number one. Number two, Obviously, I want to look at is what's the running back room going to look like, because obviously Mostert didn't play. Achan's a little bit hobbled. Jalen Wright obviously is good. Jeff
I
Wilson
can
left the
tell you
game
the
early.
secret of what the running back room is going to look like. Whoever
Go ahead.
practices the best plays. That's how Mike McDaniel always rolls. Whoever
Look.
practices the best plays. Whoever's got the hot hand in the game plays.
Exactly.
And right now, so far, it's been Achan for the first 2 games. So
those are the 2 things offensively. And defensively, I think you got to look at the outside, right? Like, they're facing some great receivers with DK Metcalf, JSN, and I know Tyler Lockett's a little bit older, but him as well. Like, they have 3 guys that are game records, right? And so I'm interested to see how they match up well with those guys, for real.
Yeah, definitely. So here on Dolphins in Depth, we will be here on Wednesday to give you a recap of the first practice day of the week as the Dolphins prepare for the Seattle Seahawks. For Isaiah Smalls, this is Omar Kelly, and we will see you on Wednesday.
Peace.